Chapter 17. Die like a man, you punk. Salvador Buenrostro was the next to be thrown in with the piranhas, and his time in the tank was especially designed to send out a message that the Mexican Mafia could get anyone, anytime, anywhere. It was set to happen in the middle of a busy attorney room at the LA County Men's Central Jail. The plan was to stab Buenrostro until he was dead. Twice, La M had already tried to move on Buenrostro and had failed. A cocky and ambitious boxer Enriquez volunteered to do it right. The sheer brutality of the hit, the audacity of what we're doing, that's what we want out there. We are the Mexican Mafia and want everyone to understand that we will even whack our own. We're spreading our terror. It's terrorism. It generates fear. And we'll parlay that into money making. The 45-year-old Buenrostro, known as Mon, was a hardcore old school member of the Mexican Mafia. Like most of his breathing, he was a killer, a particularly tough and gritty soldado. He was already doing life for carrying out a $15,000 contract on a Pasadena businessman. He later tried to escape from prison. Mon was a stand-up mob guy, but lately he'd been causing some dissension between some older and younger brothers. And there were rumors that he had badmouthed Joe Pegleg Morgan. That was viewed as politicking, and politicking was a fatal offense. It was one of those gray area rules, but this offense did, after all, concern hardliner and Emmett de facto boss Joe Morgan. Benjamin Topo Peters was a close, long-time loyal associate of Morgan's, a right-hand man who had a reputation for deviousness paired with the willingness to carry out mafia orders without question. Topo and Mon had come from prison to Men's Central Jail to be witnesses in an unrelated murder trial. The defendant was a mafia associate on pro per status, and he'd used his subpoena power to transfer the two mobsters down. Of course, neither of them actually had anything to do with the murder case. It was all part of a mafia ruse to get them to the county jail where Mon could be killed and Topo could help make him dead. The hit was set for the evening of July 14, 1991. Boxer Enriquez had made an appointment to see William McKinney, a defense lawyer who was helping him with one of his two homicide cases. They met in one of four glass booths that spanned the wall on one side of the jail attorney room. 27-year-old Boxer sat across the table from McKinney, one wrist handcuffed to a chain that was mounted onto the floor under his chair. The lawyer recalled that Enriquez seemed in a good mood. They had talked briefly when he asked McKinney if he would order down the two witnesses to get statements about his case. Guess who? He asked for Mon Buenrostro and Topo Peters. It was all part of the setup. Boxer had a handcuff key in his mouth and a 6-inch long, 1.5-inch wide metal shank stashed in his shoe. His attorney left the booth to speak to another inmate. 15 minutes later, Mon was escorted into the room, followed by Peters. Boxer and Mon immediately locked eyes. I'm looking at him right through the window, and he knew right then he's done. He knows it. Topo had a full head of hair, but was funny looking. Rotund, boisterous, hot-tempered, 49-year-old man with a crazy streak. His moniker, or placa, came from the fact that he once had a big tooth like a little gopher. Topito means big tooth in Spanish. Now, after years of heroin addiction, most of his teeth were rotted or missing. He was only 5 feet 5, 3 inches tall, with a confident little waddle when he walked, and unlike most Mexican Mafia stalwarts, he had no tattoos. Peters wore a size 6 shoe, but he had on size 12s to hide a 9-inch shank inside one of them. He was flopping along like Bozo the Clown. It was almost comical, but no one was laughing. As soon as Boxer caught sight of him, he spit out his key and opened up his handcuffs. Outside the glass attorney booths were 3 rows of stools where inmates sat across from the visitors, a small partition between them. Mon Buenrostro was seated in the last row, 30 feet away from Boxer, his right hand handcuffed down to a chain between his legs that was anchored to the floor. Topo Peters was seated 1 stool away. No one was in between them. He too used a smuggled-in handcuff key to free himself. Boxer waited. Topo took off his shoe, pulled out the shank, and suddenly leapt from his seat and stabbed Buenrostro repeatedly with an over-the-head motion. Deputy Harry Amos who was seated at the front desk that led into the attorney room, yelled, "Hey, hey!" That was Boxer's cue. He jumped up and ran across the room, knife in hand, sliding on the slick tile floor with one shoe on, yelling, "Kill the motherfucker." A female probation officer seated nearby screeched, "He has a weapon." It was too late. Topo stabbed at Buenrostro's side 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. He was screaming, "You're going to die, sucker. If you die, you die." Right hand still chained to a stool, Mon fought for his life. He ended up getting Peters in a headlock and grabbed onto the wrist that held the shank. Deputy Amos came from behind and clutched Topo's shirt as Deputy Clarence Stephenson, who hurried in from the control booth just outside his attorney room, gripped the back of Buenrostro's shirt, both trying to pull the struggling inmates apart. That was when Boxer slid in. "It's time to play the devil," he said scornfully. Mon threw a karate kick that found its mark on Boxer's face, then another quick kick to his chest. So Enriquez plunged his knife into Mon's buttocks. That made him turn and expose his front, and Boxer shoved his jail-made blade into the side of Mon's gut. Then he took a step towards Deputy Amos. "Stay the fuck out of this." The deputy backed away and put out a call for assistance. Enriquez swung around and savagely stroked at Buenrostro's stomach 10 times more. His shank dripped with blood. Knowing he couldn't stop the attack alone, Deputy Stevenson suddenly turned his attention to the 4 dozen attorneys, probation officers, private investigators, and inmates scattered in a panic across the room. "Get out," he commanded as he directed them toward the release gate at the back of the attorney room. He ran out into the hallway toward the watch sergeant's office and told a few other deputies there was a double shanking in progress. Boxer was crazed as the karate kicks from Mon caught him again. Topo's shank folded up on him. As he tried to straighten it out, he slipped on the slick, bloody floor, dropped the knife, and fell with Buenrostro on top of him. Once on the floor, he managed to get Mon in a bear hug from behind, holding his shoulders and neck, screaming, "Die like a man, punk." At the same time, Boxer's shank repeatedly ripped through Mon's skin. All the mafioso were on the floor, writhing in the blood and sweat. Enriquez could feel his adrenaline pumping. Buenrostro was face down, slightly on his side. Boxer just kept stabbing. Every time he struck, there was a deep groaning sound as the knife cut through the flesh and cartilage. The stench of brutality was thick in the air. Mon shouted, "Get them off me!" By now, orders had been given to lock down the entire jail. Deputy Stevenson returned with Deputies Larry Zimmerman and Dan Ordway, who had less than 3 years on the job between the two of them. None of the 3 deputies had a weapon. Jailhouse policy was clear. If jailhouse cops carried weapons, there was always the possibility that the heavily outnumbered deputies could be overwhelmed by inmates and their arms taken and used against them. So Ordway and Zimmerman kept barking orders to drop the shank, kicked at Boxer again and again, and backed off a little every time Boxer threatened them with a weapon. Enriquez wanted to finish the job on Mon. This was Mafia business, and it pissed him off that these deputies, as brave as they were, wanted to be some kind of heroes and save Buenrostro. For a moment, he seemed distracted and looked up at them. "Fuck you. You guys stay out of this. Just back up and let us do what we gotta do." Kicks from the deputies snapped at his legs and pummeled his back. A small woman officer pounded on him with a leather-bound notebook, pleading with him to stop. "You're killing them. You're killing them." He kept sticking the shank in and twisting it as if the cops weren't even there. Nearly a dozen deputies were now in the room, circling. Boxer, his adrenaline rush wearing off, began to feel the sting of their blows. A kick buckled his knee. The pain was sharp. Another kick knocked him off a stool where he sat delivering a final few strikes with his blade. He was tired and drained emotionally and physically. All 3 battling mobsters were soaked with blood, their jailhouse blues now tinted a deep red. The smell reminded Boxer of wet copper pennies. Finally, the handle on his knife bent as if it too had had enough. Boxer said, "That's it, man." "Okay, he's dead anyway," replied Topo. Boxer threw a shank across the room. Deputies descended on him, and Topo with a vengeance. The cops were on an adrenaline rush too. Boxer was not abused in any way, but he caught a fist or elbow in the eye, enough to cause a welt. He threatened Deputy Zimmerman. "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to get you if you put your hands on me. Don't you know who I am?" Boxer still had the chain around his waist, handcuffs detached, the smoking key protruding from one of his cuffs. A deputy had kicked Topo's shank across the room, and his handcuff key sat on the desk above the stool where he was first seated. There was a large pool of blood on the floor. The entire attack had taken no more than 2 minutes. Buenrostro was taken by ambulance to a hospital intensive care unit in critical condition. He had 26 stab wounds, 1.5-inch gashes all over his upper torso and legs, but he lived. Afterward, in true Mafia style, he refused to make any statements. Boxer and Topo were freshly handcuffed and taken to the medical clinic. Topo had a knife wound on his right hand, either self-inflicted or hit by Enriquez. Boxer complained that he had pain and swelling in his right knee. On his way to the medical facility, Topo told his 2 deputy escorts, We were not going to hurt no staff. We respect staff. You guys should have let us finish what we were doing. Enriquez was more irate. In the medical clinic, he saw Deputy Zimmerman and warned him, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. Topo tried to talk to him. Okay, it's over. Just relax. A couple of hours later, the 2 assailants were temporarily locked up in an empty cell block module 3700. Peters was put in a cell at one end of the tier and Enriquez in his own cell at the other end. They talked as a deputy within earshot was assigned to secretly listen and transcribe their conversation. Hey Boxer, good day, man. I feel so relieved. I've been so stressed. Yeah, I feel so good, replied Enriquez. Topo Peters, also known as Benny, loved to talk, and he went on and on about all the blood, his role in the stabbing, and what he had said during the attack. He wanted Mon to die, wondered if there'd be a story in the newspaper, and bragged that there was nothing authorities could do to them that hadn't already been done. Hey Boxer, he concluded, if they try to get us on a murder, just plead guilty so we can get back to our cells at Pelican Bay State Prison and watch color TV. Benjamin Topo Peters couldn't read or write and was a man of no vision who rarely thought beyond the moment. He was dedicated to La M, but according to Boxer, Peters was basically a hedonist. All he cared about was getting high on heroin and killing people. In an interview with deputies 5 days later, Topo confessed, I did it. Now all I want to do is plead guilty and get it over. So that's what he did and settled into prison for the rest of his life. Prison was home for Benjamin Topo Peters. The attorney room in the largest jail in the country was supposed to be a secure, neutral, safe place for inmates, attorneys, investigators, and parole and probation officers. The Mafia terrorized it, and that's what they wanted to do. Let people know that the Black Hand had a firm, powerful grip from the jails and prisons to the streets. The Mexican Mafia was emerging as a powerhouse, and the new, younger generation, noted Boxer Enriquez, understood that terror equaled money. They had plans to control not just California, but the whole damn country. Deputy District Attorney John Monaghan knew it was a problem. There is no threat you can hang over these people who are in prison that continue to commit offenses. There is absolutely, positively no threat at all. They can pretty much do whatever they want to do, secure in the knowledge that nothing else can really be done to them. After the Buenrostro hit, not only did Topo go back to prison, but so did Guate Grajeda, Joe Morgan, and John Stinson. County jail administrators had had enough of all of them. Boxer was left to face 2 murder charges and 2 attempted murder charges. He was also indicted along with 7 others for his role in the Men's Central Jail drug smuggling operation. Grajeda and Stinson weren't even charged in the drug conspiracy. They already had life prison terms, and prosecutors didn't want to give them another case that would again allow them to go pro per, delay trial, stay in LA, and cause even more trouble. It turned out that the Los Angeles County Sheriff's detectives had a jailhouse informant working on the inside of the Stinson, Grajeda, Enriquez drug sales scheme. The Mafia found out who it was and arranged for him to be stabbed when he was transferred to the California Institution for Men in Chino. Through other informants, cops had now learned that Men's Central Jail was considered the home base for the Mexican Mafia and Aryan Brotherhood business activities. It was more comfortable than the harsher prison environment and closer to home, a place where mafioso could have meetings, deal drugs, and do hits. Deputy DA Frank Johnson put it this way: they really don't care if they get caught or not. They do virtually outrageous crimes with impunity. You really get the impression from dealing with these people, whether they're in or out of prison, it's not much consequence to them.